sport about things. I prepare our Sunday class and program by Erev Shabbat, right before Shabbat, Friday afternoon. I normally have the program set. And then on Motzei Shabbat, Saturday night, after Havdalah, let's say Denise and I have some private plans, personal plans. The deal is that I first go upstairs and check to make sure that there isn't any breaking news, groundbreaking news, because you're here and I don't want to have you at the program. And it turns out I'm the only one in the world who doesn't know what's actually going on. So I check the news, and 9 out of 10 times, it's the usual stuff. The UN condemned us over Shabbat, let's say, and the International Criminal Court condemned us, and 3 universities have riots. It's the usual stuff. But last night there was really, after Shabbat, when I looked at the news, there was quite a story. And so that meant I told Denise, we've got to change our plans for tonight because I got to put that in. And then I'm not just going to throw in any old clip. There are 10-minute clips, 20-minute clips, even 4-minute clips that I don't want to put on. ABC, NBC, CBS, their focus of the story, all 3, and CNN, their focus on the story was Israel, in the course of freeing 4 hostages, killed 200 Arabs. And the story, then the cameras start showing you Gaza and all the Arabs that got killed in order to free the hostages. I don't want to waste your time with that. I don't want to waste my time with that. As soon as they go in that direction, I look for my next clip. And it's one of the reasons very often I end up with Fox News, because they have less of that. But I don't start with Fox News. I try to find, and I go to the Israel stuff. I go to the Israel stations. So let me just say one more word on it, and then we'll get started. We've learned Thursday nights in our classes on Jewish ethics and values and fighting war. And you've heard this from rabbis and you've heard it from ethicists who know Judaism. We're not allowed to kill people just to kill people, just to make a point. In World War I, Germany they wanted to start a war. They started the war. That's why the main punishment after the war was imposed on them. That's a whole nother story, whether it was too much, etc. Germany wanted to attack France. And we're not going to take our time why. And in order to attack France, they had to get through Belgium. Belgium was neutral. It was internationally known you can't go through Belgium. And Britain said, if you march into Belgium, we're going to have to enter the war to protect Belgium, not to mention France, with whom we have an alliance. And that's how all of that got out of control. So Germany's marching through Belgium saying, we don't want to stay here. We don't want to conquer your country. Just want to get through to get to France. And the people of Belgium didn't want the Germans in there, not because they were anti-German up to that point. They didn't want France in there either. We're neutral. And the Germans came through anyway. And the Belgians started sniping at them. With sniper fire, Belgian citizens from their windows would shoot sniper fire at German soldiers and place bombs, and they were fighting the Germans as though this were a war between Belgium and Germany. And Germany had no trouble putting them down quickly and marching on to France. And what the Germans did to reduce the Belgian opposition is they would line up hundreds of Belgians and just shoot them at random. Not that those Belgians per se had done anything wrong. They might not even have shot any kind of sniping or anything, but simply pull out a certain number of Belgians and let these Belgians know that if they're going to make trouble for us, we're just going to wipe out Belgians. Judaism doesn't allow that. You're not allowed to make a point by just killing innocent. Well, let's not use the word innocent, by killing people that weren't involved, just at random. Not allowed to do that. If Israel had to kill 200 local Arabs, they did not come with a plan to kill 200 Arabs. They went in with a plan to rescue 4 Jews that, by God's miracles and Israeli intelligence, they were able to locate, and they were able to get them out. And if that meant bombing buildings around that house where they were being held, you have to bomb the buildings. If your loved one, or you yourself, or I, were assigned to be part of that operation, and Israel knows you're going to go to this building, and there's a building next door here and here and across the street, and there are going to be Hamas people in windows shooting at anybody trying to get into that building, and shooting at any people who then come out of the building with the hostages being released. You have to get rid of those buildings. You got to get rid of those rooms. And so you give them warnings, but then you have the other problem. If you start warning them, are they going to move the hostages somewhere else? So Israel did what Israel had to do. And I'm frankly not interested that people died that people around there died. I don't celebrate it. I'm not going and having a party over it, but I'm not losing any sleep about it either. They don't want that to happen. Surrender. Give back the hostages. I ask myself, there are 5 American hostages among them. What has the United States done to get back any of those 5 hostages? Seriously, forget about Israel. What has the mighty United States of America, my country, done to get the hostage back? Nothing. Why are there not American Marines or other American troops or American intelligence? Why aren't they there? Are we going to say it's because of Biden? I don't know. But it's interesting. America has not done anything to release it and get out its 5 hot. Why haven't they negotiated? Why haven't they told Hamas, listen, we understand you were going after Israelis. Inadvertently, you picked up 5 Americans. You give us back our hostages. Behind closed doors, so nobody's in a back defensive way. Why did they do that? Why didn't they further say, listen, with those 5, you weren't just starting up with the Jews in Israel. You're starting up with the United States of America. And we really can flatten you. You'd wish that you were being attacked by Israel when we're done with you. Why didn't they do that? Where's the American pressure on Hamas? So you'll say, well, it's not so easy. Everyone knows Qatar, or Qatar, however they pronounce it. Everyone knows Qatar controls Hamas. Qatar gave them $83 million. Qatar has 2 of the 3 of the 4 leaders of Hamas are living in Qatar. Literally. Khalid Mashal and Mohammed Deif, and there's another one. They're living in Qatar. Why doesn't the United States tell Qatar, you get us those hostages, those 5 Americans, we're going to start bombing Qatar. And you're not going to look like that pretty Arab Muslim country you've always been. Again, behind closed doors, so no one is embarrassed to back down. You bet they would be free. America's not doing what it needs to do. And Israel has a philosophy. It's a Jewish philosophy, goes back to the Torah. We get our hostages back. It's in the Torah. There was a war, and one person, it says, one person was taken hostage, and they went to war and they brought him back. And this continued to Entebbe. During the time of Idi Amin, when the Arabs took those people off the plane and held them at the Entebbe airport and started making demands, and everybody was wondering what's Israel going to do? How are they going to give in? But no one in the wildest dreams thought that Israel is going to fly to the other side of the world to try to get those hostages out. And they did. And that's that song, Eretz Tzvi. The theme, the paragraph, the stanza that repeats in Eretz Tzvi is that we are a land that does not abandon its sons to foreign lands. Shalo yufkaru baneha le'eretz zar. We are a people that do not abandon, do not make hefker of our sons to be held in foreign nations. And that's the model. And you know, Netanyahu's brother is the only one who got killed in that operation. And he was the commander of the operation. So this is part of our tradition. We make deals, and we've learned, Israel has learned the hard way that there's a certain point where you have to just go in and get them, because you make deals. Israel made one deal, one hostage deal about 20 years ago. And one of the guys they let out They had to give up hundreds and hundreds, even over 1,000 Arab terrorists in order to get back like 3 people. And one of the people they let out was this guy Sinwar, who then comes and becomes the head of Hamas. Another one, they let out this Muslim sheikh, Yassin, who ended up being a founder of Hamas and the spiritual leader of Hamas. And they've learned. Now the Hamas, again, they're saying, you want your hostages? We want you to let out 1,000 people, and then we'll let out some of them, and we want you to leave Gaza, and then we'll let out some more. It's easy for other people who don't have this problem to lecture Israel. America, and I love America, it's my country, and land where my fathers died, land of the Pilgrim's Pride. America, what's on America's borders? Mexico and Canada. Mexico and Canada. We don't know, thank God, what it is to have country on each side shooting in, just shooting in nonstop every day, leaving 100,000 of your citizens homeless for 6 months as they are up north, because there's nonstop shooting from Hezbollah in Lebanon, and there will be a war there soon as Israel finishes the Hamas war. It's definitely coming, because you've got 100,000 Jews who have not been in their homes for 6 months, because they can't. Nobody knows what's going on. That's not in the papers. All they want to know about is the 200 people that were killed. Final footnote, and then we get started. This morning, I was looking at the news one last time, not to be caught flat-footed. And it came out in the news that the 4 hostages that were being held, I assumed last night when I went to sleep, they were being held by Hamas. Well, they were being held by Hamas, but I assumed they're being held by Hamas. Okay, not in a tunnel, in a house? Okay. Turns out this morning, whose house was it? It was the home of an Al Jazeera journalist. Imagine like it comes out that someone from the New York Times or the Washington Post is holding 4 hostages. There's an Al Jazeera journalist. Israel just closed down Al Jazeera about a month ago, and there's an uproar. But Al Jazeera, freedom of the press, a journalist from Al Jazeera was holding the 4 hostages. So that brings us back to this idea of innocent civilians. Hamas cannot do it without the innocent civilians. Okay, that's the prologue or the whatever. Here we go. Thank you for being here. Thank you very much for being here. I hope you'll get some strength and some good out of this program.
Rabbi?
I won't be taking any questions for a while. I've got a lot of material. I don't have time.
All right.
Thanks a lot, but I will stop for you. Absolutely, Jen. Take that off the screen, and then we're going to take this off the screen, and then we will be able to start. Here we go.
At 11 a.m., Israeli Special Forces conducted complex hostage rescue mission and successfully rescued 4 of our hostages from Hamas captivity in Gaza. Noar Gamani, Almog Meir Jan, Shlomi Ziv, and Andrei Kozlov. They are back home in Israel. They are alive. They are well. They will undergo medical examination and will soon be reunited with their families in the hospital. Noah, Almog, Andrei, and Shlomi were rescued after 246 days in Hamas captivity after they were brutally kidnapped from the Nova Musical Festival on the 7th of October. This was a high-risk complex mission based on precise intelligence conducted in daylight in 2 separate buildings deep inside Gaza. While under fire inside the buildings, under fire on the way out from Gaza, our forces rescued our hostages. Israeli forces have been preparing for this rescue mission for weeks. They underwent intensive training. They risked their lives to save the lives of our hostages. This is what we do in Israel. We risk our lives to save the lives of our hostages. While we are happy that our 4 hostages are home, we will not lose sight that 120 hostages are still being held by Hamas in Gaza. Men, women, children. When we say that we will do everything to bring our hostages back home, we mean it. We will not stop fighting for their freedom. Any other decent country in the world would do the same.
Begin with breaking news out of the Middle East as Israel welcomes home 4 hostages rescued this morning from Gaza during a special military operation. All 4 kidnapped by Hamas from the Nova Music Festival during the October 7th attacks 8 months ago. And they include 22-year-old Almog Mayer Jean, 25-year-old Noah Argamani, 27-year-old Andrei Kozlov, and 41-year-old Shlomi Ziv. Andrei and Shlomi were working as security guards at the music festival. And you may remember Noah Argamani from this horrific video from the October 7th attacks. We all saw her screaming as Hamas fighters drove away with her on a motorbike. We know her boyfriend was also kidnapped and is still being held captive. Israel says this morning's rescue mission took place at 2 separate locations in central Gaza near a refugee camp. Palestinians there described the raid as hell on earth as heavy shelling and artillery fire bombarded that area. Officials in Gaza say at least 210 people have been killed, more than 400 injured, including women and children. But CNN cannot independently verify those numbers. We are covering these breaking developments from all angles. Ben Wiedemann has more on the casualties inside Gaza. But first, we start with Paula Hancock's in Tel Aviv, who has more details on the surprise rescue mission that brought these 4 hostages home. Paula, how are these hostages doing?
Well, Jessica, what we've been told from the doctor at the medical center they were all taken to once they were rescued is that they are all stable, they are in good medical condition. And just outside that hospital, we have seen all day friends and family coming to welcome home their loved ones that have been in captivity for the past 8 months. Now, many of them have thanked the military for the mission. They have thanked those that were part of this rescue operation, but they have also said that there are 120 more hostages that need to be rescued. Now, we did hear from the mother of one of the hostages, Almog Meir Jan, and let's listen to what she said.
Thank you for bringing my son to me, to us. I'm so excited that I could hug him today. I couldn't stop hugging him. I couldn't stop. And tomorrow is my birthday, so I got my present.
Now, she also said that they want a ceasefire deal to make sure the rest of the hostages can be released. It's something we've heard here tonight in Tel Aviv, where the weekly protest has been held. We heard from one of the women speaking. Her cousin is one of those who has died in captivity, the body still being held by Hamas, saying not everything will have a Hollywood ending. So there's a real push at the same time as celebrating the rescue of these 4 hostages, a push for a ceasefire and hostage deal. Jessica?
And Paula, what more are you learning about the rescue mission itself? This was high-stakes stuff. How did it come together?
So what we're hearing from the IDF side is that the military, the security agency, the police had a joint operation. They had been planning this for weeks. They say it was based on intelligence, and it was just on Thursday night that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave the green light to go ahead with this mission. They said they effectively built 2 apartment blocks. They knew that these hostages were being held in civilian multi-story buildings, and they built blocks so that they could train in how to try and extract them from that area. Now, they have pointed out it wasn't a civilian area, and that many of the other hostages would not be held in a similar situation. So they don't believe that this could be necessarily replicated after this. Jessica?
All right, Paula Hancock's for us live in Tel Aviv. Thank you very much. Let's turn now to the impact in Gaza, where Palestinians are describing that.
I'm not interested in hearing this part. We're going to move forward. Let's just get this out of the way, and we're going to move forward.
Fruit until now.
Ben Wiedemann for us in Beirut. Thank you so much for that reporting.
I'm now going to play for you. It's a combination, a sort of medley of Misha Berach by a group, the prayer for the armed forces of Israel, praying to God to protect them always, and Eretz Tzvi, the song of the same melody. That melody was used afterwards for Misha Berach for the prayer for the armed forces. Eretz Tzvi was written as the movie theme song of Mivtza Yonatan, Operation Jonathan, the Israel version of the Israel movie on the Entebbe rescue. There were about 3 of those. One was done in Israel, 2 in America. For the one in Israel, as with all movies, there's normally a theme song, and that was Eretz Tzvi. And that melody had so touched the country of Israel that it later was adapted with different words as the prayer for the armed forces, that we always play different versions every week. So this is a mixture of the two. I was looking for exactly this in the aftermath of what happened yesterday. Prayer for the armed forces, that God should protect them. And just a little bit, that recurring stanza of that it is a land that does not forget her sons to a foreign land. parents catching up with their kids having been brought home last night, but yesterday. You really can't. Just a clip of to show the families together, not to be able to hear what they're saying.
אני מבקש להודות לצבא האיכותי, האנושי והמוסרי ביותר בעולם.
I want to thank the armed forces that are the most moral, ethical in the entire world.
אין צבא כזה בעולם.
There's no army like this anywhere else in the world.
Wow, спасибо вам.
And the prime minister came to meet with the families and the hostages who were saved.
Спасибо вам. Что происходит? Что?
ביקשתי שיעשה כל מה שהוא יכול כדי להחזיר את נועה, כדי שמפה האמא שלה תפגוש אותה. הוא הנהן לי. זה מאוד נגע. זו העוצמה של ראש הממשלה. מאוד נגע. אני בהזדמנות זאת רוצה להודות לצבא האיכותי, האנושי.
I have to thank the army that is highest quality, highest humanity.
אני בטוחה במיליון אחוז, לא באחוז אחד, מיליון אחוז.
I'm grateful and thankful. Thank you so much. This is the Israeli version of Happy Birthday to You, Happy Birthday to You. It turns out not only was that lady that interviewed earlier marking her birthday, but by coincidence, another family, that guy, it's also his birthday.
כולם שיחזרו, אמן, אמן, כול בשלום, אמן, בשלום, אמן. Israel just carried out a remarkable rescue operation.
And now I'm just going to show two more Netanyahu speaking in English and a little bit in Hebrew. And then the other part of the program in class today is this past week was Yom Yerushalayim, the 57th anniversary of having liberated the eastern part of the city of Jerusalem. And it's going to be educational about the liberation of Jerusalem 57 years ago. I had to take out some of the material I had prepared in order to make room for the new material that came up yesterday. There also will be 2 or 3 songs that recur a few times in different contexts. Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, the city, Jerusalem of gold, and Im Eshkachech Yerushalayim from Psalm 137. If I forget the old Jerusalem, may my right hand forget her cunning, may my tongue cleave to the roof of my palate. If I do not remember thee, if I do not extol Jerusalem above my greatest joy. The reason for those words, tongue cleaving to a palate, right hand losing its cunning, is that when the Jews were being exiled by the Babylonians onto Bavel, as they were going, and we sing this, we say Al Naharot Bavel, the text of that psalm the Babylonians mocked them as they left with some of their instruments, the lyre, L-Y-R-E, and the other stringed instruments, which a right-handed person plays with the right hand. And they said, "Play us some of your songs of Jerusalem," having burned down our Beit HaMikdash and exiled us. They were mocking us. And the response was, "I play songs of Jerusalem with my right hand on the lyre. May my right hand forget her cunning, her skill, her ability, if I ever forget Jerusalem. And in the same way, you want me to sing songs of Jerusalem? May my tongue cleave to the roof of my palate, that I would not be able ever again to sing if I ever forget Jerusalem." So that'll be coming up. I'll have probably two versions. Some of us don't really know those songs and others know it, but that's why I did different versions. Here we go, back to this. Okay, let's just get that going. Okay.
Of 4 hostages held by Hamas. This operation required ingenuity and courage of the highest degree, and our soldiers performed in an unmatchable way. We're committed to getting the release of all the hostages, and we expect Hamas to release them all. But if they don't, we'll do whatever it takes to get them all back home. Hamas is committing war crimes every day, including the holding of these hostages. Our soldiers are performing in the most valiant and moral way to end this war with a victory against these killers and against these kidnappers, and we shall prevail.
This song comes from the book of Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu, Perek Lamed Aleph, chapter 31, Pasuk Yud Zayin, verse 17. It speaks of, again, at the time the Jews were being exiled to Babylonia, the prophet Jeremiah, who in many ways, unfortunately, was called upon by God to deliver stirring and scary prophecies that if you don't shape up and live by the laws of Judaism, he's going to exile you from the land. And unfortunately, that came true. He was given the opportunity by God also to prophesy that as you're going on the path, the road from Jerusalem to Babylonia, they're forcing you on a path that takes you through Bethlehem, Beit Lechem, and you pass the monument, the tombstone of Rachel, our mother Rachel. And talking poetically, or maybe more, Yirmiyah says that Rachel, as she sees her sons going into exile, cries bitter tears. And so Jeremiah continues, "Hold back your tears, Rachel, from crying. Wipe away your tears, because there is going to be joy in the end. Vishavu banim likvulam, and your sons, your children, will return to your borders." And I just felt this song spoke to me in the aftermath of the hostage release. Vishavu banim likvulam, and your children came back to your borders.
ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים לגבולם. ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים לגבולם. ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים לגבולם. ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים לגבולם. ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים לגבולם.
And now we move to the other theme for today, Jerusalem. I ask myself, you see, the rest of the world does not fully appreciate the totality of what Jerusalem is to us as Jews. Ask yourself a moment, just think in your mind, how many heartfelt songs do you know, for those of you who are Americans, how many heartfelt songs do you know about Washington, D.C., that over the 200-300 years have been written by people with tears coming out of their eyes, songs about the beauty of Washington, D.C.? I can't think of any. I can think of a few songs about California. There's the Mamas and the Papas. There was one of those, California Dreaming. There was California, Here I Come, right back where I started from. What else? New York has East Side, West Side, all around the town. London, other world capitals. London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady. Compare that to the songs about Jerusalem. That may Jerusalem be rebuilt. May the temple come back and be rebuilt. May the city of holiness be restored. The city of gold. If I forget the old Jerusalem, the world cannot even begin to appreciate what Jerusalem means. When someone says, I'm not anti-Jewish, I'm just anti-Zionist. To be Jewish is to be Zionist. Jerusalem is part of being Jewish. It's like saying, I'm just anti-kosher. I'm not anti-Jewish. I just don't believe there should be kosher food in this country. Or I don't believe there should be a circumcisions in this country. But I'm not anti-Jewish. I don't believe there should be Rosh Hashanah in this country. But I'm not anti-Jewish. To say that you're anti-Jerusalem, anti-Israel, anti-Jews of course you're anti-Jewish. And if you honestly say otherwise, the most I can say for you is you don't know what it is to be Jewish. And don't tell me that your parents are Jewish or your Jewish father and your non-Jewish mother. Don't tell me you're Jewish. You don't know what it is to be Jewish. So this is the first, and here we go. I won't be interrupting too much because we won't get done that quickly otherwise, but I do want to put things in context. Here we go. Shlomo Carlebach, of course, was probably was the great composer and singer of Jewish music in the 1960s and 70s. Touched many of our lives very deeply, myself included. May he rebuild Jerusalem, the holy city, rapidly. Holy city. Rapidly in our day. This is from Moscow.
Thousands of people showed up for the annual Israel Day on 5th parade, which went off without a hitch and without any disruptions, in large part due to the intense security around the event. Fox 5's Michelle Ross reports.
There were moments of song and dance on the Upper East Side during the Israel Day on 5th parade, but a solemn tone weighed over this year's event compared to past years.
They clearly were celebratory in theme and experience, but this is a very different year.
The usually festive celebration of Jewish heritage has a more somber theme this year. One people, one heart, to bring renewed attention to the more than 120 hostages held in Gaza since October 7th.
Free the hostages, bring them home now.
Family members of those still held hostage walked the event route, holding pictures of their loved ones. With concern over potential disruptions by protesters, security was extra tight this year. Every spectator had to walk through a metal detector, and their belongings were thoroughly searched, but it wasn't looked at as an inconvenience.
I love the security. They're here for us. We were just talking about it. It's sad, but we got to do what we got to do. We want to stay safe, and if it takes us an extra hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to be here, we're all willing to go through it just to show our support.
A few days prior to the event, the NYPD said that it would fortify the area, and the department has. Looking down this way, barricades prevent spectators from coming onto the route. A few feet over, even more barricades, and across the street, there's fencing all on the Central Park side going north and south with no spectators at all.
Specialized units also here like counterterrorism, and Governor Kathy Hochul among many politicians marching. And as family members plead for their loved ones' safe return, they were embraced on Fifth Avenue.
I saw people crying, look at us and crying, and people that I never met. It's really touched me, and it's given me really a lot of strength.
More than 40,000 people came to show support, and many say they will not stop fighting until all hostages are released. On the Upper East Side, Michelle Ross, Fox 5 News.
This is a celebration of Jerusalem Day in Israel this past week also. March in the Old City, and it's known as the Flag March. Tens of thousands came to give a big hug to Jerusalem for the purpose of celebrating the liberation of our eternal capital. I'm very emotional. I'm very emotional by this. It's 57 years have passed as though it were yesterday.
עשרות אלפים באו מכל רחבי הארץ להשתתף בחגיגות ובתהלוכת ריקוד הדגלים המסורתית.
Tens of thousands came from all over the country to celebrate.
וזאת למרות המצב הביטחוני הרגיש והאיום של ארגוני הטרור לבצע פיגועים.
That was despite the ongoing cloud of possible terrorism.
ראה איך כולם בתפילה מברכים כדי שהחטופים ישובו הביתה לשלום.
Look how everyone is in prayer and thanking God and praising God for having brought us here in peace.
אירועי יום ירושלים החלו אמש בפרקי הודיה ותפילת ערבית חגיגית בישיבת הכותל.
There's among the gazillions of yeshivas in Israel, there's Yeshivat HaKotel, the yeshiva that's near the Kotel, and the first of the celebrations began there.
בתפילה משותפת לניצחון חיילינו, לרפואת הפצועים ולהשבת החטופים במהרה. הבוקר אלפים הגיעו לכותל וקיימו תפילת
The festivities continued the next morning. As you know, the Jewish day begins at night, so it started the night before at Yeshivat HaKotel, and during the daytime, thousands upon thousands were at the Kotel, and they're praying for the safety of the soldiers and the return of the hostages.
שחרית חגיגית. המראות של המונים נושאים את דגלי ישראל ועושים דרכם לכותל המערבי דרך העיר העתיקה מרגשים מאוד. זו מסורת של עשרות שנים שריקוד הדגלים מקשט את העיר ביום חגה.
It is a tradition for many years now, tens of years, that people come out on, it's like Flag Day, just like America has June 14 as Flag Day. They all come out with their Israeli flags on Yom Yerushalayim.
אין כמוהו יום ירושלים. ירושלים זה הלב של עם ישראל.
תחת הבטחה כבדה, התהלוכה עברה במתווה המקורי שלה, דרך שער שכם והרובע המוסלמי. הממשלה קיימה היום ישיבה מיוחדת במוזיאון ארצות המקרא, שבמרכזה התקבלו החלטות על חיזוקה של ירושלים.
And the government had a special session also on Jerusalem, and Netanyahu was announcing that the cabinet is voted to make additional expenditures of substantive amounts for the further development of Jerusalem, the heart of our nation.
הממשלה תאשר היום שורת החלטות משמעותיות לפיתוחה של ירושלים, לב עמנו.
בשנה הבאה בירושלים, בירושלים הבנויה.
לא רק בעיר ציינו את היום המיוחד הזה. אלה תיעודים של לוחמים בצפון ובתוך הרצועה.
Not only was it being celebrated in Jerusalem, but our soldiers were celebrating Yom Yerushalayim up north on the border near Hezbollah and in Gaza.
שהביעו את אהבתם לירושלים.
רוצים לאחל מכאן לכל עם ישראל, יום ירושלים שמח, לא ננוח עד שנביא את החטוף האחרון. תודה רבה עם ישראל.
Want to wish everybody back in Israel, he's obviously in Gaza, happy Yom Yerushalayim. We're not going to rest until we've returned every hostage.
Mazel tov Jerusalem, ירושלים.
Mazel tov Yerushalayim.
ירושלים ביום חגה זוכה לחיבוק מעשרות אלפים שבאו לחגוג את שחרורה של בירתנו הנצחית.
You notice, by the way, this is AFP, that's Agence France Presse, my French forget about, but it's the French press agency. And you notice how they officially describe it. It's Jewish national, not Jews, not thousands of Jews, not thousands of Israelis, but thousands of Jewish nationalists. In other words, it's a right-wing thing, which it's not. It's a national thing.
מכובדיי הרבים, לוחמי צה"ל, משחררי ירושלים העתיקה, ובראש כולם אחיי ואחיותיי למשפחת השכול, משפחות הנופלים במלחמה, משפחות הנופלים במערכה הנוכחית, משפחות גיבורינו, גיבורי העם, ומשפחות החטופים שאנחנו נחושים להחזיר את כולם הביתה, החיים והחללים כאחד. בחלוף 57 שנים ממלחמת ששת הימים, אנו שוב נתונים בסערת המלחמה. אז תקפו אותנו בכמה חזיתות, וגם היום אויבינו תוקפים אותנו בכמה חזיתות. אז ביקשו לחנוק אותנו בטבעת של עוינות ואלימות, וגם היום יש מי שרוצים להשמיד אותנו באמצעות טבעת טרור. אז ידענו שרק ניצחון מוחלט יבטיח את קיומנו, וגם היום אנו חותרים לניצחון מוחלט על מבקשי נפשנו. בששת ימי הישועה, ב-1967, קמנו כאיש אחד, והשבנו מלחמה שערה לתוקפנו. כוח החיים שפיים בנו הכריע את הכף ברגעי מבחן. בתום המלחמה מצאנו עצמנו בחבלי מולדת קדומים, בנחלת אבות, בגבולות בני הגנה. לא נוותר על הישגים אלה, כי אחרת נזמין עלינו מתקפות נוספות, חמורות יותר מאשר ב7 באוקטובר. איחוד בירתנו ירושלים גאל אותנו מפצעי מלחמת העצמאות. הקו העירוני שהפריד בין חלקי ירושלים יצר סביבו שטחי הפקר מסוכנים. תקריות אש וירי צלפים גבו מחירים בנפש. אבל כל זה השתנה באחת, כשלוחמינו הגיבורים השתלטו על גבעת התחמושת, נגעו באבני הכותל המערבי, הריעו לקריאה הר הבית בידינו, הפילו מחיצות ופתחו את ירושלים למרחב הסובב אותה. ירושלים כולה חזרה להיות שלנו, וירושלים כולה תישאר שלנו לנצח. חג שמח ירושלים.
If I forget the old Jerusalem. May I forget my right hand. If I forget the Jerusalem. May I forget my right hand. If I do not extol Jerusalem. Higher than my chief joy.
The time has come to begin
A movie was made, and this is the trailer of that movie. So the people you're looking at are actors, not the actual people, but it's an exceptional movie. I saw it. Our whole shul went a few years ago, and we saw the movie as a shul. Just an exceptional movie. This is just a quick trailer, about 2 minutes.
battle of annihilation.
Our goal is clear: to wipe Israel off the map.
We shall destroy Israel and its inhabitants.
I just started this job 10 months ago. Now you want me to plan an entire war in 2 days?
Yes. Take the old city and be done with it.
No more bloodshed.
We should go in now. And what is your great strategy for that?
To be right here, Mota, and not to go in. History will never forgive you.
Jerusalem has never been conquered from the east. Not since King David's time.
So it will be the second time. And the last one.
Enter the old city immediately and capture it.
55th Paratrooper Brigade, move toward the Lion's Gate. It was a merciless battle, but you didn't complain. For you, it was enough to drive forward and to conquer. Jerusalem is yours, forever.
From the dawn of civilization, armies arrived from the ends of the earth to lock swords over Jerusalem, the city that King David chose some 3,000 years ago as the capital of his ancient Israelite kingdom. 2 subsequent Jerusalem temples served the Jewish nation for most of a millennia from atop the Temple Mount. Their former site remains Judaism's holiest location until today. In the course of the 1948 Israeli War of Independence, the Jordanians occupied East Jerusalem, capturing the Old City and the Temple Mount, and expelling its Jewish inhabitants. A 1949 armistice agreement left this territory in Jordanian hands. But in violation of its agreements, Jordan denied Jews entry to the city and its holy sites. Jordan systematically desecrated and destroyed 58 synagogues, ancient Jewish religious sites, tens of thousands of graves on the Mount of Olives cemetery that had served the Jewish nation for 2,500 years. For 19 years, the ancient capital lay divided between Jordan and Israel, with 7 miles of urban border separating East and West Jerusalem. When war erupted between Egypt and Israel at 7:14 on the morning of June 5, 1967, Israel lacked the manpower and resources to fight on more than one front simultaneously. It concentrated its forces on the Egyptian front, leaving a single brigade to face Jordan. Israel hoped that Jordan would stay out of the fray.
He appealed to King Hussein and to other neighbors to stay their hand, and Israel would do likewise.
But Jordan had already mobilized 11 brigades on Israel's borders. It had invited Iraq's forces to join an attack on Israel, and it had signed a defense pact that placed its army under Egyptian command to better coordinate an Arab-Israeli war. At 9 a.m., at Egypt's urging, King Hussein ordered the indiscriminate shelling of Jewish Jerusalem and other targets. His planes bombed Israeli airfields. Israel bit its lip, hoping that Jordan was making a formal gesture of solidarity with Egypt, and that the eastern border would soon fall silent. But by 12:30 p.m., Jordan's offensive morphed from a rumble into a roar. Jordanian troops moved into southern Jerusalem's no man's land and stormed Government House, the UN compound strategic to control of the city's south. Seeing her eastern border catch fire, Israel sent her wings ahead of her claws, first responding to Jordan from the skies. Jordan's airfields and air force were rapidly obliterated. Meanwhile, Israel scrambled to muster an infantry brigade from the north and to divert a paratrooper brigade from the Egyptian front. Israel did not intend to capture the Old City, and certainly not the West Bank. Its stated goal was to secure key roads to Jerusalem, strategic ridges and fortified positions that encircled the city, and to create buffer zones for the future safety of Jerusalem and its environs. Israel also planned to liberate the route to the Mount Scopus demilitarized enclave that included the Hadassah Hospital and Hebrew University buildings. Mount Scopus was located in Jordanian-held territory, but in violation of the armistice. Jordan had severely restricted Israeli access for close to 20 years, rendering the area unusable. In the afternoon of June 5th, Israel launched a surprise assault on Government House. It captured the compound within 25 minutes of fierce fighting, then moved swiftly to take the nearby Naknit and Pa'amon strongholds, so that Israel could take control of the road from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. By 8 p.m., these missions were complete. Meanwhile, an Israeli armored brigade stormed the Tel El-Ful ridge that rises some 2,800 feet above sea level. The ridge was key to controlling the Jerusalem-Ramallah route. Fierce battles raged through the night, but by 9:15 a.m. on June 6th, Tel El-Ful fell to Israel. Early in the morning of June 6th, Israel fought one of its bloodiest battles at Ammunition Hill, a fortification that controlled the road to Mount Scopus. At 3:30 a.m., the battle began. Paratroopers advanced, exposed, without air or artillery cover due to the proximity to residential buildings. Barbed wire, minefields, stone-lined trenches, and cement bunkers formed an impermeable nightmare. Every few meters, Jordanian bunkers spewed relentless fire, often requiring hand-to-hand combat to subdue. Eventually, with all their officers dead, individual soldiers led the battle on their own initiative. As the sun rose some 3 hours later, Ammunition Hill fell as silent as a graveyard. 36 Israeli paratroopers had lost their lives, and today, Ammunition Hill serves as a memorial to their sacrifice. Israel was now free to approach Mount Scopus. At 9:30 a.m. on June 6th, Israeli forces approached the enclave and fought a second bitter battle to capture Mivtar Hill. They accomplished their mission, but 34 soldiers fell this time, along with scores of injured. Down south, Israel made its way to Jordanian Jerusalem's Abu Tar neighborhood. They arrived at noon and fought a lengthy battle against 5 fortified Jordanian positions. By 6 p.m., the IDF had completed their immediate mission. All roads to Jerusalem had been secured, and all enemy strongholds in the immediate area had been captured. The Jordanian forces in the Old City were isolated. At 7:45 a.m. on June 7th, the third day of the war, the IDF High Command issued a surprising order: capture the Old City of Jerusalem. 2 battalions attacked the high ground, overlooking the city from the Jordanian side of the Mount Scopus demilitarized zone, while a 3rd battalion headed for the Old City itself. At 9:45 a.m., Colonel Mota Gore breached Lion's Gate, and at 10 a.m., his voice crackled through the army radio, shouting ecstatic words that still ring in Israel's memory. The Temple Mount is in our hands. Minutes later, IDF Chief Rabbi Shlomo Goren arrived to recite the poignant Shehechi Anu blessing and to sound the shofar, as emotional paratroopers wept and smiled at the ancient stones of the newly liberated wall. The iconic images of that moment have become symbols of Jewish survival and of the nation's inextinguishable bond with the sacred city. A 2nd Brigade entered the city south through the Ashpot Gate to flush out pockets of resistance. At 11 a.m., the Jordanian governor signed surrender papers, and the city elders surrendered at 11:15 a.m. By 1 p.m., the Old City was under Israel's control.
From Poland. Are there any Jews left?
Where should we go?
Don't go east, that's for sure. They hate you there. I wouldn't go west either, if I were you.
We could use some food.
Isn't that a town over there?
Hi everyone, it's Yoni from Stand With Us, and in honor of Jerusalem Day, I'm coming to you from Ammunition Hill, site of one of the bravest battles in all of IDF history. Israeli-controlled West Jerusalem. The paratroopers arriving at Mount Scopus found themselves faced with a daunting task: difficult terrain, pitch black conditions, a lack of military intelligence, and they were soon to find out that even though they planned to attack with what they thought was 3 times the amount of soldiers that they needed, about 100 Israeli soldiers, they were facing near equal amounts of Jordanian soldiers, putting the attacking Israelis at a serious disadvantage. To make matters worse, with the dark conditions and the bullets flying overhead, the Israeli commander who was supposed to take this western trench made a small navigational error and ended up taking the wrong trench. The western trench was left exposed, setting the stage for the bravery of the Battle of Ammunition Hill. Come with me through the trench. Let's understand what happened here. The Israeli soldiers who arrive here, the paratroopers, have literally an uphill battle, fighting through a heavily fortified area, fortified over 19 years by the Jordanians who were controlling this area. And as you can see, inside the trenches, there's very little room. They basically have to walk single file line. Whoever is first in that line is going to be exposed to fire without any of his comrades to offer cover fire. If that person falls, they need to be climbed over, somehow replaced. Every 100 yards or so, one of these bunkers sits with Jordanian soldiers inside, waiting for the Israeli soldiers to turn the corner so that they can ambush them and attack them. And what's going on outside of the trenches is not any better, with Jordanian fire coming to them from the heart of Ammunition Hill. The trenches were bad, outside was even worse. Guys, we're inside a Jordanian bunker right now. Like I said, every 100 or so meters, you turn the corner and you run into one of these bunkers. Now, inside the bunker, you have, somewhere between 3 to 5, and even as we're going to discover, much more, 8 and beyond Jordanian soldiers just waiting here. Look, it's reinforced. They have the advantage here where they're protected, and they have these little windows all around. The one you can see over here, where they just kind of, they sit here and they wait. They don't have to do too much. They just have to look through the window and wait for someone to come, or wait in the corner over here. And when the Israeli soldiers are making their way through the trenches, they don't know what's coming. And all of a sudden, as they turn the corner, the Jordanians open up with fire, with heavy, heavy firepower, meaning that each one of these bunkers, at each of these turns and strategic locations, each one of these bunkers needs to be cleaned out one by one by the Israeli soldiers. Entering into the trenches, the Israeli soldiers find themselves very limited space to maneuver. The first person, generally the commander who's walking here within the trenches, is going to be the first person hit by the Jordanian snipers or by Jordanian fire coming from the bunkers that are scattered here in the trenches about every 100 meters, every 100 yards or so. They can't move, they can't put more than one person at a time. They can't turn around without creating a traffic jam. And they're taking fire both from the grass, from the grassy area behind us, and from within the trenches, from within the bunker right over there. The soldiers who were able to make it through the first part of the trenches then found themselves with an even more daunting challenge. As they go further and further up Ammunition Hill, they find themselves not only going through more difficult terrain, but also with the walls rising and rising and rising. They can no longer look outside of the trenches and clearly see what's going on, and they find themselves with a very, very dangerous blind spot. Having made it uphill, the paratroopers find themselves with the trenches closing in on them. And while it might seem secure and safe, the reality is they can't see what's going on outside and they're vulnerable. As they walk, a Jordanian legionnaire lobs a grenade into the trench. The grenade goes off, and by a miracle, not a single paratrooper was injured. But knowing that he can't rely on miracles, Deputy Company Commander Nir Nitzan realizes that he needs somebody on the outside to give him cover fire. He has no time to ask for a volunteer for this suicide mission. He turns around and sees behind him 21-year-old Eitan Naveh, a strapping machine gunner who he gives the order to. He turns to Eitan and he says, "Eitan, go out of the trench and cover for us." Even though it was a suicide mission, Eitan lo hises l'rega. Eitan didn't hesitate for a moment. He jumped out and for a little more than 10 meters gave cover fire for his brothers in arms located here in the trench. Having been hit multiple times by Jordanian soldiers, by Jordanian bullets, Eitan fears that he can no longer continue. He turns to return to the trench and is hit in the head. He falls into the trench and dies on the spot. For his bravery, for his understanding that no one's blood is redder than anyone else's, that it's all for one and one for all. Eitan was awarded Itur Gvura, the Medal of Honor, the highest medal of honor given in the IDF. Eitan at his young age understood something. He understood what it means to be a brother. He understood what it means to be all for one and one for all. There's a lot of stories like that here on Ammunition Hill. Eitan's is probably the most famous and the one that you have to tell, because just think about what that was. And by the way, there was another soldier who got up after Eitan and picked up his spot to help clear the way. That's how they were fighting here at Ammunition Hill. When his mother is asked, what's the most incredible thing that you read on this honor given to Eitan? She pointed to this word over here, Turai, private Eitan Naveh. Because here at Ammunition Hill, the most incredible thing was that it wasn't some high-ranking generals making incredible displays of bravery and incredible decisions. It was the bravery of the simple soldiers and their ability to take command after their commanders had been injured and killed. That is what set up and allowed them to be victorious here at Ammunition Hill. With the sun rising and the battle nearing its end, the Great Bunker becomes the final stronghold of the Jordanian legionnaires. Though it was thought to have been previously cleared out by the heroic actions of the Israeli soldiers Yaakov Chayamovich, Yehuda Kandel, and David Shalom, when those three soldiers come back here to search for ammunition and grenades, they discover that there were still Jordanian soldiers within the bunker. They try to blow the bunker up with a bazooka. The bazooka barely makes a scratch. The tank cannot bring its turret in to blow it up. Eventually, in an incredible act of teamwork, 16 kilograms of explosives are thrown from one end of the bunker to the other and placed bravely at the entrance of the bunker, in between shots and grenades being thrown. The explosives are set off. The Great Bunker falls, and so ends the battle for Ammunition Hill. At the conclusion of the battle for Ammunition Hill, 36 Israeli soldiers had been killed in action. And before the rest of their brothers in arms could continue on with the task of reuniting Jerusalem, they built them a temporary memorial in honor and in memory of their fallen comrades. But that wasn't enough for the Israeli soldiers. And before they left Ammunition Hill, they buried 17 of the Jordanian soldiers who had been killed here in action and placed a sign over the grave saying, "Here lie 17 brave Jordanian soldiers." The battle for Ammunition Hill was a hard-fought battle on both sides and recognized by both Israeli and Jordanian soldiers as an incredibly brave battle. When summarizing the battle on Ammunition Hill, then Defense Minister Moshe Dayan put it as follows: the battle for Ammunition Hill was one of the hardest fought battles against the Jordanians. But it wasn't the difficulty of the battle, nor was it the immense toll, the incredible amount of casualties that we paid in order to conquer Ammunition Hill that makes it an unforgettable battle. Rather, it was the personal bravery of each one of those Israeli soldiers that makes this battle one of the most historic battles in the history of the IDF.
תדבק לשוני לחיקי הרב מייקל אם לא אזכרכי אם אשכחך ירושלים לשוני לחיתי יבלו אזכרכי בואו נשמע אתכם יבלו
איזה קהל נהדר, אתם שיהיה לכם רק בחוץ חזק. לא עליהם, לא עליהם, ירושלים, על ראש שמחתי. על ראש שמחתי.
There is no rational way to explain the remarkable circumstances that led to the liberation of the old city of Jerusalem in 1967. It was one of the most unexpected and inexplicable phenomena in the history of human warfare. There was no battle plan for Jerusalem whatsoever. Israeli intelligence never expected the impending confrontation to include Jordan, which had been in control of the old city since 1948. In the south, Jamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt, in contravention of international law, had closed the Straits of Tiran and sent 100,000 troops and thousands of tanks into the demilitarized Sinai Peninsula, a clear act of war. Tensions were also building on the Syrian border in the north. Israel expected a war on two fronts, north and south, but certainly not with Jordan in the east. Unbeknown to Israel, Jordan had signed an agreement with Egypt, placing the entire Jordanian army under the direct command of Egypt's chief of staff, General Riyad. It was Nasser's plan to unleash a triple-pronged attack from Egypt, Jordan, and Syria, which he believed the young state of Israel could not defend, and he would finally avenge the defeat of 1948. On the first day of the war, the Jordanian forces began shelling major cities across Israel, including heavy bombardment of Jewish West Jerusalem. Israel repeatedly implored the Jordanians to cease fire and promised they would not react. Once all diplomatic attempts failed, Israel had no choice but to defend herself and enter the unplanned fray in Jerusalem. Rabbi Yoel bin Nun, a member of the Paratrooper Reserve Brigade 55 under the command of Mota Gur, recalls the surprising change in plan. On the first day of the war, he and his fellow soldiers were en route to El Arish in Sinai when they received an urgent command to redirect to Jerusalem. The IDF now had only a few hours to familiarize themselves with the routes and topography in and around the capital. With only partial intelligence, a dire lack of East Jerusalem maps, and in complete darkness, the troops charged into battle at 2 a.m. early Tuesday morning on the second day of the war. It was then the paratroopers engaged in the fierce battles of Ammunition Hill, the American colony, and Wadi Joz, and suffered the worst day of losses in their unit's entire history, losing 100 soldiers in these battles. In comparison, the very same brigade fought for 2 weeks in the Yom Kippur War and lost 52 soldiers, half of those lost on this one blood-drenched day. However, despite the heavy price, Brigade 55, together with the Harel and Jerusalem brigades, had almost surrounded the old city. That very night, Mota Gur had a breathtaking conversation with Rabbi Shlomo Goren, the chief rabbi of the IDF. While in the Rockefeller Museum at the northeastern tip of the old city, awaiting orders, the rabbi said to him, "Mota, Jewish history obligates you to liberate the old city." Mota replied that while he draws great inspiration from Jewish history, he takes his orders only from his superiors. "Mota," said Rav Goren, "Jewish history will not forgive a Jewish commander who had the opportunity to reclaim Jerusalem and did not do so." Moshe Dayan, the defense minister in the unity government, had ordered them not to capture the old city for two reasons. Firstly, the intention of this defensive war was never to conquer the old city and its holy sites, sacred to many religions. Secondly, he was aware of the large Jordanian military presence in the old city, especially on the Temple Mount, with huge amounts of artillery and ammunition. Having seen the devastating losses on that one day, Dayan anticipated much greater losses in hand-to-hand street combat, especially in defense of the holy places. This would be a battle that Israel would not fight, or so he thought. What he did not realize was, in Rav Soloveitchik's famous words, that divine destiny was knocking at the door. The drama of Jewish destiny was about to unfold. That very same night, two utterly unexpected and unpredictable events occurred. The first, in a remarkable display of unity, left-wing Yigal Allon and Menachem Begin from the right came together as one to Prime Minister Levi Eshkol to intercede on behalf of Jerusalem. Now was the time to liberate the holy city. The emergency cabinet heavily debated the issue, with many concerned that the world would not tolerate a Jewish conquest of Jerusalem and that Israel should not attack. Eventually, Moshe Dayan's decision was overruled and the cabinet gave the green light. It was time to return to Jerusalem for the first time in 2,000 years, at any cost. At that very same time, another dramatic decision was being made. The commander of the Jordanian troops in the Old City, sensing the inevitable and realizing he was surrounded, requested permission to retreat over the Mount of Olives and back over the Jordan River. General Riyad gave his approval, and the Jordanians fled that very same evening. Our sages describe how Jerusalem is the only city in the world that exists on two planes, in heaven and on earth. Jerusalem on high and Jerusalem down below. Nothing happens in Jerusalem on high unless it happens concurrently in Jerusalem below. Perhaps at the very moment of both debates between the rabbi and the commander and within the cabinet in the city below, a similar debate was taking place in the heavenly cabinet. Were the Jewish people worthy of returning to Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh? Was this the moment they'd been waiting for 2,000 years? Or would they have to wait 2,000 more? Would there be more devastating loss of life in a battle on the mountain of God? Or would there be a more merciful outcome? As we know, divine mercy won the day. Am Yisrael would not have to wait any longer, and little blood would be spilt on that epic day in Jerusalem in June 1967. The hand of heaven was moving history forward. When Mota Gur positioned himself on the Mount of Olives the next morning, preparing for the battle of his life, he was astounded. There was barely a Jordanian soldier in sight. After a few minor skirmishes, and mercifully with very little loss of life, Mota Gur proclaimed the iconic words, Har Habayit B'Yadeinu, the Temple Mount is in our hands. Israel had accomplished what seemed impossible with all the political predictions and military assessments from just a few days before. The Jewish people had returned home.
אני יורד ברגע זה, אני יורד במדרגות אל הכותל. אינני אדם דתי, מעולם לא הייתי, אבל זהו הכותל, ואני נוגע באבני הכותל המערבי.
This extraordinary turn of events is another powerful reminder of the meaning of Jewish life. Our collective journey on earth cannot be separated from our heavenly odyssey. Individual and national master plans cannot be severed from the master's plan. The very existence of Israel and Jerusalem is a constant testimony to the inextricable bond between human history and divine providence, between Jewish destiny and our spiritual destination.
In 1967, the Jewish people took back their ancient capital and reunited Jerusalem. And while millions of people celebrate this day, they often overlook what happened only one day later. Rabbi Shlomo Goren was not satisfied with having only Jerusalem. The Jewish people also needed Hebron and the tombs of the fathers and mothers there. The morning right after Jerusalem's liberation, Rabbi Goren and his drivers set out for Hebron under the assumption that they were catching up to the rest of the IDF. But when they got to Hebron, there were no soldiers in sight. To Rabbi Goren's surprise, the rest of Hebron was quiet. Only the waving white flags of surrender could be seen outside of the houses that lined the streets leading up to the tomb of Machpelah. Meanwhile, the IDF was planning a strategic attack on Hebron from the nearby hills, not knowing that Rabbi Goren had already taken the city. Seeing the hand of God in action, Rabbi Goren went right up to the tomb of Machpelah, planted a makeshift Israeli flag outside, and entered the ancestral burial grounds of the Jewish people for the first time in 700 years. Rabbi Goren's actions opened the doors of the tomb of the Machpelah to future generations, allowing Jews and Bible lovers from all over the world to visit Hebron and pray there. This year marks the 50th year of Hebron's liberation. Hebron's citizens and its soldiers are on the front lines every day to ensure a Jewish presence in Hebron and allow people like you to visit anytime. The Hebron Fund was established to help support the brave people who live and protect Hebron.
Okay, a word about this as we start winding down today's program. We're winding down. There's one or two more songs basically, and one other. About 15 or 20 years ago, the Mormons were far more active in missionizing. Many of us at one time or another has had a knock on our doors on a Sunday, and either it's the J Witnesses or it's been the Mormons or one or two others of those. And the Mormons decided to buy property on Mount Scopus near Hebrew University. And there was an uproar, particularly in the Orthodox community, that they're coming to missionize. And there was no commitment that if they're going to come and set up a Bible study center for Mormons, we want guarantees that there will be no missionary work. And as a result of a great amount of uproar, it got into the Knesset. It was a political thing. It could have torn open the government. The religious parties were going to leave. And they finally signed an agreement that they've honored no missionary work. But amid the time of that big fight, Mordechai ben David, who became the single biggest composer and singer of Jewish music outside of Israel after the passing of Shlomo Carlebach, whom you've heard twice tonight, wrote a song about the Mormons trying to buy property in Jerusalem and planning to use it for missionary purposes. And the song is called Jerusalem is Not for Sale. And I do this so that most of you probably never heard of this issue, much less the song. And it may make you feel a little uncomfortable with this song, but although it has a good beat, and it's to bring again the idea, no one fights over London or Washington, D.C. the way the Jews get passionate over Jerusalem. And it's now from the past, but it's good. If you've never heard the song, as we wind down, how could I do a Jerusalem Day without the song? Okay. Again, buckle in your seatbelts.
Overnight, a massive construction atop our Jerusalem mountains. A campus luring innocent souls to drink from the forbidden fountains. Like many before, they've come here for war. We're warning them now, it won't pay. Jerusalem, her holiness crying, defiling her dearest location. Politics, a blinding sense of pride. Are we not the chosen nation? Together as one, we will overcome, bringing her freedom today. Yerushalayim is not for sale, voices crying, thundering throughout our cities. You better run for your life back to Utah overnight before the mountaintop opens wide to swallow you inside. Yerushalayim, your foes will fail, senseless trying, he's guarding his holy city. He's punished all its intruders so awfully, they have perished, their names are history. returning back to the roots more than ever. The leftists fiercely fighting truth, dampening that spark still burning. So wake up, my friend, this is the very end. The arrows are pointing our way. Yerushalayim is not for sale. Voices crying, thundering throughout our cities. You better run for your life back to Utah overnight before the mountaintop opens wide to swallow you aside. Yerushalayim, your foes will fail, senseless trying. He's guarding his holy city. He's punished all its intruders so awfully. They have perished, their names are history.
And as I said, they worked out a deal and no missionizing. This is a quick IDF soldiers discovered another Hamas tunnel in the middle of an UNRWA school.
ספר במרכז ג'באליה, ועוד רגע את הלוח שמאחוריי, זה בית ספר שתפקד עד ה-5 לאוקטובר, יומיים לפני המתקפה. אם נצא רגע החוצה, אפשר להסתכל פה על כל המרחב, מצד אחד, יש פה את הסמל של ירושלים בהר הבית, מצד שני, בהדרשים. בתוך הבית ספר עצמו, ממש, במרכז שלו, בית ספר שאני מזכיר, תפקד עד ה-5 לאוקטובר, ולמדו פה ילדים. אפשר לראות שיש פה ממש פיל משמעותי, ובתוכו יוצאים מחבלים. אפשר לראות את הסולם שעובד עד למטה, בערך 30 מטר עומק של פיר, שהבית ספר מזין אותו בתשתיות חשמל. אפשר לראות פה את הכבל שיוצא מתוך הקיר. ממש משמאל הסולם יש כבל שיוצא מתוך הקיר, שהבית ספר מזין אותו בתשתיות חשמל ומים.
As I said, we're now bringing it to the end. And with these, let me just remember, when Rome destroyed the Beit HaMikdash, the second one in the year 70, and then later exiled Jews, there were still Jews till 135. That's the time that Rabbi Akiva and that generation of Bar Kokhba fought the Romans and fell at Beitar 65 years after the fall of the second Beit HaMikdash. And still, even after that, there remained Jews in Eretz Israel, like at Yavne. But the fall of Jerusalem, Titus, the general who brought down the Beit HaMikdash, force-marched a large number of Jewish prisoners that were taken from Yerushalayim, and they were basically taken to Italy. And a big, gigantic structure, the Arch of Titus, was built, and the Jewish prisoners were forced to march underneath that arch, on which were the words, Judea Capta, Judah, the Israel has been captured, and Israel will never be again. And, you know, it's interesting as an American watching people offended by certain monuments to people that they despise, like, let's say, the period that people started toppling some of the monuments to Civil War generals, or in the Soviet Union when it fell, as people started to topple monuments to Lenin. Nevertheless, Arch of Titus still stands there. However, after 1948, instead of it being seen as a curse, it became a source of pride to Jews in Italy. That here's this monument that for 2,000 years was a monument to the destruction of the Jewish connection to Israel. And now it's a reminder that even when the world thought they drove us away, that we've come back. So here is a brief little snippet of Jews standing specifically under the Arch of Titus, singing. And then, as I said, we're going to bring it to an end because we're kind of a little bit over. It's been a big program today. And I'm, again, grateful you're all here. And I promise, John, that I will answer the question then. Here we go.
Yeah.
גולני, גבעתי, צנחנים, מג"ב, שריון. לחבר'ה שמסתובבים כאן בין הדוכנים יש רצון אחד משותף, להתגייס לצה"ל כמה שיותר מהר, כמה שיותר קרבי.
הנדסה קרבית זה מעניין אותי, באמת ביעלום זה יותר מעניין.
אני יודע שאני רוצה קרבי, אני רוצה גולני.
גם בעוקץ זה גם מעניין אותי, אני אוהב כלבים.
מדובר בעולים חדשים שעדיין לא סיימו את תהליך העלייה, ולגייס אותם אורך יותר זמן מהרגיל מסיבות שונות ובירוקרטיות.
המלחמה פשוט גרם לי לראות עד כמה זה באמת חשוב לתרום למדינה ולשמור על העם.
אבל האירוע המיוחד הזה שנקרא עולים על המדים של ארגון נפש בנפש, הסוכנות היהודית, קרן מריאז' ומיטב, נועד להקל עליהם.
אנחנו מבינים שזה תהליך שהוא מורכב, לפעמים בירוקרטי, ובעצם הגדנו תחת קורת גג אחת ובמקום אחד את כל מה שהם צריכים לעבור בהצלחה את התהליך של הגיוס. אנחנו רואים צעירים שמתעקשים להתגייס ליחידות קרביות, עושים כל מאמץ, אנחנו כמובן מסייעים להם מול הצבא, עושים הכל כדי להגיע לישראל והתגייס לצבא בכל דרך.
אריאלה בילוט, בת 28, עלתה מניו ג'רזי ב-11 באוקטובר, 4 ימים אחרי מתקפת 7 באוקטובר.
For me, as soon as I heard the war broke out, I immediately felt like, why am I not already in Israel? Like I should already be there to be able to help, to be able to contribute. And so for me, it was like, we say like no-brainer. It was a no-brainer for me to come here.
היא אחות בהכשרתה, בחדר שלה בדירת השותפים דגלי ישראל הם פריט חובה, וכעת היא מרגישה שהיא רוצה לתרום לצבא, ואף שעברה את גיל הפטור, היא לא מתכוונת לוותר.
Well, I'm going to try the push. I have a very strong personality, thank God, and I've used it a lot to be able to do a lot of different things in my life, including a lot of different types of nursing assignments. And so even though I'm older, I'm hoping to try to push my way through the same way I also pushed for my aliyah and pray to Hashem and just hope that it works out, that if it's supposed to be what it's supposed to be.
כמו זכאית לפטור.
אוקיי.
כן. אבל אם את רוצה בכל מקרה, אני כן אבקש שנייה שיקחו אותך לרעיון.
מול נציגי הצבא היא מנסה לברר כיצד אפשר לזרז את התהליך. כבת למשפחה שהיגרה מברית המועצות הקומוניסטית, שם שמרה ליהדותה בסתר, היא מבינה עד כמה חשוב להגן על מדינת ישראל.
Now what's happening in Europe, what's happening, with the war, it reawakened that and kind of relit that in me, where I feel like, okay, now it's my turn to, kind of make that change, and I need to fight for this as well, where I need to be fighting for our independence, fighting for our freedom, fighting, for our defense, and so we can live.
אתה מעוניין להתגייס.
מרדכי, בן 26 ממוסקבה, הוא עורך דין שעבד במקצוע ברוסיה. עכשיו בישראל הוא מבקש להתגייס. בצבא מציעים לו תפקיד בפרקליטות הצבאית. הוא רוצה קרבי.
אני רוצה ללכת לגילני טנק לשריון.
הוריו חוששים, אבל יודעים שלא יוכלו לעצור אותו מלממש את חלומו.
С одной стороны, мои родители очень рады тому, что я приехал в Израиль. Я нахожусь в безопасном для себя месте, потому что, когда началась война в России, в частности в Москве, возросла волна антисемитизма. И, в частности, то, что я всегда хотел пойти в армию, они крайне положительно на это смотрят. Но, безусловно, как родители, они беспокоятся и боятся за меня.
פגשנו היום גם את ג'וליה, אנה ולאורה, שלישיית אחיות שעלו לארץ מברזיל. הן לא בקטע של קרבי, אבל לכל אחת יש רצון שונה מהאחרת.
אני רציתי משהו מדובר צה"ל. אני חושבת על סייעת רופא שיניים. היינו כל החיים ביחד, אז אם לא נהיה ביחד זה גם טוב.
האהבה למדינה אצל אלה שהגיעו לכאן רק לפני רגע אינה תלויה בדבר, ובעבורם שירות משמעותי בצה"ל ומימוש החלום הציוני.
Some of you know, we've seen this once before. Andre Ryu is a international, obviously a violinist, and he's one of them. If you look him up on Wikipedia, he's one of the world's most successful entertainers. He has packed crowds and record numbers of record sales all over the world. And he always puts on a great show, and it meant a lot to the people of Israel in 2018 that this world famous entertainer was not like one of those who would refuse to play in Israel, but instead agreed to do a whole show in Israel and all the fame. He plays mostly popular things. He's there for like 1 or 2 nights, and instead of playing more esoteric music, he always he gives the crowd what they want, and the kind of famous things, Strauss and stuff like that, the famous things. And this last song was not on the program, but just as the program had ended, and everybody wanted encore, encore, he came out and surprised them with this. Well, thank you so much. Let me just stop that. We're done. Hold on. There's always a catch. Okay, there we go. Thank you very much. I'm sorry we ran a little bit over. I had a whole Yom Yerushalayim program. Like when they say, when somebody gets beaten up and he says, you should see what the other guy looks like. You should see this stuff I had to take out of the program. But after the hostage release, there was that. So thank you very much for being there. Even though it's a few days later, this is Sunday, first time we could meet. Chag Sameach, first of all, for Yom Yerushalayim. Secondly, Chag Sameach for the forthcoming Shavuot, if Mashiach hasn't come first. Tuesday night, and it'll be Wednesday and Thursday, Shavuot. And thank you so much for being here. Obviously, we will not have Tuesday night Navi class or Thursday Rambam class, but we will, God willing, we'll be meeting again next Sunday. Thanks so much. Sorry we went a few minutes over. I promised Janet that I would take the question. And again, thank you everybody for being here. What's up, Janet?
So Rabbi, you remember you were saying the Torah foundation for no brother left behind, that we always retrieve people. Isn't that like the first foundational one when Abraham went after Lot with the 5 kids and the 4 kings?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Right. Abraham risked his life. He went with 318 people. The Torah tells us it was 318 people that went with him. And they went and they fought. It was the time of the battles of Kedar Laomer, the 4 armies against the 5 kings. And the 4 kings were stronger and defeated the 5 and took Lot. Abraham's nephew is a hostage. You're absolutely right. And Abraham went to war to save Lot. Absolutely so. Everybody have a wonderful day and a wonderful week and a wonderful Shavuot, and enjoy the cheesecake. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.